So, guys, welcome back to another episode of Project Peak Performance. Today, I'm with two elite athlete couple effectively in the running scene. We've got Jess and Dan from Limitless Coaching. So I don't know which one to start with, actually. Dan or Jess, do you wanna introduce yourself and just basically tell a bit of background about yourselves and what you do? And
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. So, my name's Dan. I've been involved in athletics for nearly 20 years now, as an athlete. And then from 2019, I actually started coaching myself. And then a year later, I started coaching Jess. Originally, we trained together in the same training group, and then eventually went our separate ways, and then ended up rejoining as a sort of coach-athlete dynamic, as well as already being in a relationship together, I guess. Um, and then now we sort of coach academies in London. We coach people from different sports, essentially just trying to help people succeed in the walk of life that they've chosen to be in.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I'm Jessica, Tappin, Jess, whatever you want to call me. I am a 400-meter hurdler. I used to do heptathlon. I went to the Commonwealth Games for England back in 2014. Unfortunately sustained an injury, which ended me switching to a different event completely. If you know anything about heptathlon, it's 7 events and 400-meter hurdles is not one of them. So I thought I'd take up a completely different one. And it's going really well. And we're training for the Olympics currently, aren't we?
Yeah,
Paris.
yeah, big month ahead for us. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question on this? What gave you? I just want to understand a little bit more about you guys. So, what was it that put you in the sporting world originally? What was the passion behind it? Do you know what brought you to this level? And then the next question will be, what put you onto the coaching?
For me, I was a crazy child. I have ADHD and I have a lot of energy that I need to burn off. So sitting in a classroom at school was my worst nightmare, having to sit still. So running around doing every sport under the sun was my cup of tea. So I literally tried everything. And I was actually a dancer for like my whole life pretty much until I went to sixth form. Had to make the decision whether I wanted to do athletics, which I was doing just like a couple of nights a week, or go off to dance school. So decided dancing actually wasn't for me. I'm going to go down the athletics route. And literally from that day, actually I think it was when I went to uni, I was like, yes, I'm going to train with Jessica Ennis, training with Tony Minicello, and my life's going to be amazing. Training's going to go fantastic. And he came down. We only did like a couple of sessions, and the group just like fell apart. I did went into cheerleading for the first year in the end. We won our nationals. Yeah. And then it wasn't until my final year at university that I started training full time for athletics.
Mm-hmm.
And in that year, so that was 2012, I got my first GB vest and not looked back since.
The rest is history.
Kept training. It's been a bit of a roller coaster.
Not the orthodox, I guess.
that sounds like the classic ADHD life. Actually, I'll be honest with you.
I was going to say, welcome to the club, by the way.
As a welcome to the club, I completely get that journey. That's the reason why probably the heptathlon exists actually for a period of time, wasn't it? Like I didn't know which one to choose. So I'm going to go for
just do all of them.
Yeah.
So true.
And Dan, you 20 years. You said you were before you sort of got into coaching.
Yeah.
So what did 20 years look like for you?
Yeah, well, a bit different to Jess, I guess. I was like massively into football as a kid. I mean, I still am now as like a spectator, but I started playing football when I was like 7, 8 years old, and then got to like 13 years old, and I sort of always realised that like I was like the fastest guy on the pitch, and it was sort of like that was my massive strength in football. I wasn't necessarily the most technically gifted, but having sort of pace at that level in particular was devastating, really. So my parents sort of urged me to join like a running club just to see how I got on. And then yeah, sort of within a year, I was like getting like national medals at like under 15 age group, and then into under 17, and then decided to call it quits with football because it was tough when you're like 15 years old. It's tough like training every night for either football or athletics.
Yeah.
So it got to a crossroads. Chose athletics because I was sort of at a higher level relatively. Maybe looking back, being like an average footballer probably pays more than a high class athlete. So, but when you're a kid, you don't follow the money, you follow your heart, right? So, I was at that age, and I made the decision, and it's been fairly successful since. But yeah, about 15 years after that decision, I basically, long story short, my coach kicked me out of the group for reasons that we don't need to go into today, but I was sort of at a crossroads again where it was either I retire from athletics because there was no real other coaches out there for me, or give it a go myself and sort of see what I could achieve off my own back. I think I was 26 at the time when I was coachless, and I sort of felt I had enough sort of wisdom and knowledge that I'd gained from all the coaching experiences in the past, all sort of my personal good and bad experiences in the sport, that I was equipped relatively well to give it a go, even though I was sort of brand new to the coaching scene. And yeah, don't get me wrong, like the first couple of years, it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of sort of doing stuff that I always wanted to do under different coaches, but they didn't necessarily allow me to. And not everything worked, but sort of now, I mean, ever since I've been coaching myself, especially post-COVID, I've run personal bests nearly every single season. And yeah, we're both in our 30s now, and to be sort of running personal bests into your 30s in sort of sprint events in elite sport is not really that common at all. So something's obviously working. So we're heading in the right direction still, which is great.
That's amazing. What changed between the coachless to obviously coaching yourself? Looking back now, with all of the time and the knowledge that you have, what changed there? What is it that you're doing now that you weren't doing before?
I think massively, one main important thing, I think, physically, is listening to your body. Like, whereas before you have a set program, this is what you have to do, blah, 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 blah. If you don't do it, you end up feeling bad that you haven't, you missed out, you're slacking, you're behind, blah, blah, blah. However, we've done really well at that. Maybe one day we'll wake up and you think, oh, my hamstring, or this, that, the other, whatever. We adapt, and we never miss stuff, but yeah, we adapt. But I think the main thing that has made us come on leaps and bounds is our mindset. Like, without a shadow of a doubt, like your brain is so powerful.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, like, we sort of stripped everything back to basics, and we just started enjoying the sport again. Like, when you're involved in elite sport for a long time, it can get, it's hard to put it into words, but we was based in Loughborough University for the majority of our athletics career, which you guys have probably heard of because it's like a massive elite sports hub of the UK. And when you're doing well, it's a fantastic place to be because you're surrounded by greatness. But then when you're not doing well, it's a terrible place to be because you're surrounded by greatness. And like, if you're injured or you're just not having the season that you wanted to have, like, there'll be tens, hundreds of people on campus who are having the season that you wanted to have. So as much as it can lift you up in those good moments, you can also feel very isolated, and you can, I don't know, I always got the feeling that I was just like bang average when I lived in Loughborough and I was training in Loughborough. And it wasn't until we moved back to Essex after COVID that we realized that we actually wasn't average. Like, we was just in that environment where even when you're running personal best, you're made to feel very ordinary. So we sort of created our own environment when we moved away, where we surrounded ourselves with sort of ambitious, like-minded people. And And that's where the enjoyment sort of started growing again for us. Like we realized that we lost it for a number of years in our 20s, when you should be thriving really and enjoying everything in life in your 20s, right? But it wasn't a great time for either of us really. And it took like moving away and changing our environment to then flip the switch on the mindset side of things as well.
Yeah.
Quite interesting. My late friend Chris actually was at Loughborough University, and he had a similar experience. He was a phenomenal taekwondo champion. Oh. And obviously he had blips in that period of time when he was at university, which he, like elite level, gone on the world stage, European champion, goes there, and he was even struggling on some capacity on that. So I do get exactly what you mean by that. And also, like, I don't know, like environments is a massive thing, especially when you're talking about your mindset shift. Environments are a huge factor. I've got one question for you. This is actually more of a personal question, actually. So I'm about to do what you call Endure 24. So I'm about to do that next weekend. I've been training. I've done a few marathons over the period of time. So I'm a long distance runner. And what I loved about what you said about adapting your training program. So in the last sort of few weeks, I've sort of struggled with gut health at the moment. So the problem I've got at the moment is like, I've got this runner program, and it's like, you've got to do 12K today and this today and this. And you're thinking, like, in the last sort of few weeks, I've almost fallen out of the enjoyment of the program purely because it's become monotonous. So when you said, like, if you're a bit ill or you've got a bit of a niggle problem, like baseline level for anyone might be listening out there who might be trying to do even just a, I don't know, couch to 5K.
Yeah.
What would you say? Like, you said the words were like, we recognize our hamstring might be poor, something like that, but we adapt and we don't miss it. We adapt. What do you mean by that?
So, do you want to say this? No. So I think these apps, these runner apps and couch to 5K apps, like, they've been fantastic for a vast majority of people who need that motivation and need that discipline of having like a fixed program that they follow every single day. But there's only so much specificity and sort of individual needs that these programs can meet, because they're obviously for a much wider audience. Yeah. So if you and your friend are following exactly the same program, you're feeling completely different on any given day. So therefore the program is serving a very different purpose to both of you. Yeah. So I mean, it's a really tricky one, but I would say it's more important just to get stuff done than to necessarily follow a program for the sake of it. Like for you, for example, if you're being told you've got to do a 12K run and you're just like, I can't, like my gut health is all over the place. Like this is not what I want to be doing right now. You can adapt it. You can be like, you know what? I think I could probably get a 3K run done, or a 2K run, or I could do a couple of 1K reps with a few minutes recovery, and then you'll finish that, and you'll be like, that was a really good adaptation. I've still got something done. You're not suddenly like spiraling out of control because you haven't listened to the sort of generic program that you've been given. You're still on the right path, but you've actually probably aided your recovery process by not pushing yourself over the edge.
Completely agree. Yeah. But in another little addition to that, what we would do, so say we have something fast on the track and hamstring or whatever it may be, a muscle is not feeling great, we can compensate and do something on the bike. So we still get that hit. Because I think like the Watt bike for power is just like incredible. That's our like little go-to, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think the same for if you're running, like you can't get out because of for whatever reason, illness or muscle, but get on the bike, do something else, or maybe that day you just need a rest day. Like it's so important to listen to your body.
Listen to your body is key. Yeah, absolutely.
I think you've answered a lot of mindset there as well with regards to if let's say you're training, you hit a stumbling block of an injury of some sort and you don't do anything, that brain's not going to stop telling you that you should have been doing it and you could have done it and you're a piece of shit and whatever else it wants to come up with in the moment. But by allowing a compromise, I would say is probably the best word I can come up with here, and saying, okay, well, look, today I'm not going to run maybe 12 miles. But like you said, I could do 1K and come back. In my gut health, if I'm worried about it or whatever it is, let's do one, see how I come back, do something else. At the end of that training, if you've done something, it's going to make you feel a hell of a lot better for the rest of that day, that you can tick it off. Otherwise, it ain't going to stop, is it? So I love that you've jumped into that there. I suppose one of the questions I've got is now, I mean, you guys deal with a lot of people in sports, and your coaching is aimed predominantly around sports people, from what I can see online. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
So can you give us an idea of what an average client looks like to you and the process you go through with the client from start to finish, and summarize it for me?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a difficult question to answer for us, because if you saw our client base, it's not like, basically we haven't truly got our niche just yet.
So it's a varied number of.
Yeah, so we're working with like golfers, we're working with footballers, we're working with cricket teams. We've got our athletics academy based at a place called Lee Valley in North London. But essentially we have to tailor each program very differently. So we haven't got like a set program that we distribute and then you make a couple of changes per athlete or depending on what their goals are. We've got a footballer that plays centre mid and wants to be better box to box, but then wants to have them short bursts of speed. Or like in cricket, obviously you want to get between the stumps as quickly as possible. Like it's very personal to that individual. Yeah. So I guess the first thing that we assess when we get a new client is what level they're operating at to start with, because sometimes you get people who are complete beginners and they want to start something fresh, or sometimes you get people who are already pretty good at what they do, but they're looking more for like that to jump to the elite level.
Yeah.
So then obviously once you assess that, you can then make a program based on that person. Like if you're working with someone who's experienced, you're not going to give them the beginners pack, because you'll spend the first couple of months getting to the level that they're already at anyway. You need to fast track that, and you need to be like, all right, this guy is at this level already. Let's push him up a little bit further. Essentially, that's what I would say. Anything?
Yeah. There was one. Sorry, one of the reasons I was asking is I wanted to try and figure out. I was hoping that by asking such a broad question, it may have summarized it. So probably to answer more of a direct question now is, when out of all of your clients that you've got right now, how much of the work is physical and how much of the work is mindset and flow states? And that's probably more so where I'm coming from, if that makes sense. So if you look at your average clients, how much of their progression is down to mindset or physical? Is it muscle mass or is it mindset?
I think like we're very technical. So I feel like there is a massive physical element there, because we want to make sure you're running perfectly and as economically as possible. So yeah, I just feel like that's a physical. But like even down to pushing yourself in training or rocking up and being like, oh, I'm tired today. Like, how are you starting a session tired? Like you like, that is purely up here. You can't walk in being like, and a lot of them do in the academy. Wouldn't you say? Whereas a lot of the other individual other sports, it really depends on the person. But we get some people that think that they're pushing themselves, and they think that I've done everything I can, and then they're walking off, they're not out of breath. Like, it's tough, isn't it, to try and get into people's brains to make them get to that next stage, whereas some people have naturally got that grit and determination and they can just push through. So
I think with each individual client you can tell how much mindset training you need to do from the start. Like, we're massive on mindset. Like, essentially, to answer your question, the majority of our training will be on mindset, because mindset ensures longevity towards your goals. If you've got a and everyone comes with us with long-term goals, like I want to be here in 3 months or 6 months or 12 months, but then and obviously motivation's high for the first few weeks, and then
Okay.
things start to get a bit sticky, and then you start seeing decline. Suddenly they're not responding to your messages. Suddenly it's like, oh yeah, I didn't manage to do this today because, and like the excuses kick in. They weren't kicking in the first 3 weeks, and nothing's changed in their life.
Yeah.
But now the excuses are kicking in.
Yeah.
So like for us, if we can instill that mindset into someone, then they won't lose the motivation. Or if they do start to lose it, they know what to do to combat it. They know they can speak to us. It's not just like a all in or all out scenario. It's some days I'm going to feel down here, but you know what, I can still get it done. And then I'll wait for those days when I'm back up the top again.
Yeah.
But that's it. It's a roller coaster. Like we're sort of operating in elite sport ourselves, but we'd be lying if we said every day that we come in and we're 100% motivated to do the training session. You know, like even though we could potentially be going to the Olympics in 2 months' time, you still wake up on a Tuesday morning and you're like, I really don't want to do this today. Yeah. But that's where, if you're in the right environment and you've got the right people around you, that the other, like Jess will say to me, no, come on, like this is what we want to do. This is our goal. Like we need to get this done because it's another tick box towards the bigger goal, and that's what we try and instill in our clients as well, I guess.
What's your, from like a performance level from your base? Like, what's your morning rituals, routines like? And you can be normal if it's normal, if it's elite, just throw whatever. Just to.
I think routine though is really, really important. Especially, I think for me especially, I need routine.
ADHD, yeah. I mean, you can understand routine-wise, it needs to be there, isn't it? And if you go out of routine, it's like chaos, isn't it?
What is going on?
What is going on here? I can't do this yet. So I get exactly that. I'm a routine person.
So yeah, my morning routine is I wake up, I literally stretch for about 5 minutes, go to the loo, brush my teeth, go downstairs, have a cup of coffee, make my breakfast. That is day in, day out.
Yeah, we found like a series of stretches that you can do like with like fresh out of bed essentially. So before you even get out of bed, there's like 2 stretches that you do, and then you can do some against the side of the bed. And it just like, it gets the whole body flowing. It puts you in the right position and just feeling good for when you do get out of bed and you're sort of ready to start your day right. And that's only, like you say, you can do that for 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah, literally.
And you're ready to start your day. And you can lay in bed for some of it as well, which is like great because some people some people who struggle to get up, right? Like you don't even need to get up. You can be doing stuff but still be laying in bed and just waking up gradually. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you, again, when we look at your clients, so we've looked at the mindset and everything else. So one of the things that we're really passionate about is balance in life. And I'm of the personal belief that if it's not in balance, you will find some part of your life will be dropping out and it was going to cause you problems at some point down the line. So when you're looking at training athletes, do you look at the balance, or is there a certain balance that you look at to achieve what it is they require? So for a perfect life, we believe that you need business, connection, relationships. There's tons of things. But for a sport, you might not necessarily need all of those attributes to be great at sport. Do you look at balance, and how do you incorporate that with your clients? It might look like nutrition, timings. You know, how does balance come into your world?
Yeah, I would say obviously balance is key. And again, you sort of need to assess the individual that you're working with into what they need. So for example, we've mentioned before, we work with this academy and they're sort of towards more entry level athletics. So I'm not going to be telling them to count their calories or they need to hit like 50% carbs. And if they're on 55%, then they're going to be a terrible athlete. Or, you know, they're like the 1% when you're at a very good level.
Yeah.
Then like, okay, I need to be stricter on this. I need to make sure I'm doing this. I need to make sure I'm doing this. But like, we keep it fairly relaxed for those people at that level, because the key for those guys at the moment is to be enjoying what they're doing and to have like good people around them. So the fact that they're in a training group and like they're having fun, they're having a laugh with each other. I think sport teaches a lot of good morals to people. I mean, speaking for both of us as well, because we've been in sport for so long now, like you learn so much in sport that you can take into your life.
Yeah.
And you develop so many life skills. So keeping these kids, these teenagers in sport, they're going to learn a lot more than if they just drop out and they sort of like bum around and they haven't really got goals or aims. So whilst we want them to be as successful as possible in the sport, I almost think that just keeping them in the sport and happy is a success in itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
100%. They need to enjoy it, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And you do get the kids. There's certainly kids in there who want to succeed more than others. And you see that, and you sort of tailor things accordingly. But for some of them, like they're just there, they just want to have a good time. They don't want to go to the Olympics, or they don't want to be like a national champion. Some of them don't even want to do competitions. They just like training.
Yeah.
And so if you try and force that sort of elite mentality onto them, the chances are they flee and they drop out of the sport because they're like, this isn't why I'm doing it. Whereas the kids who are like, you know what, I want to do the nationals this year, or I want to qualify for a major championships, we push them a little bit harder in that respect because we know they want that. But you have to obviously judge it based on the individual characters, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think it's important also to make sure, like for the other ones, the other clients that we have that are at that higher level, it's important to get your sleep, to stretch, to eat properly, to hydrate. Like, there are little things that people say that you should do, but it's so easy to forget and just not do.
Yeah.
But they're just such easy things to make yourself better.
100%. Yeah,
like we
that's why it's bright green, so I don't lose it. It stands out a mile anywhere I am. So that's exactly why that's there to remind me to drink. Because I just forget. And then that by 4 o'clock.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I completely relate. So I carry my big water bottle around with me everywhere I go.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Like they're the basics. If you get the basics right, you're going to be performing at a good level, and then you can look at like the little 1% on top of that. But your hydration, your sleep, like they're just the fundamentals, the stretching, bits like that.
It's easy.
Yeah, so easy, but then so easy not to do as well.
Yeah.
So it's the balance. Is how much do you want it?
Yeah.
Do this stuff first, see how you feel, and then we'll go from there.
Tell you one thing we've been doing lately is ice baths.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. Like, I know it seemed like a massive fad since Wim Hof.
This guy here, if he is here, because I think he was below me, Rob, Mr. Wim Hof. It was there last weekend with him.
No.
Wow.
That's so cool.
It's his weekend retreat.
Stop.
Yeah, I think we listened to one of your podcasts, and you said you was going on the retreat, right? In one of the previous podcasts. I mean, how was it? Did you learn?
Let's talk about this. This is ace. This.
Yeah, go on.
It's like 400. I think I'm now about 494 days of cold water therapy. And that's like ice bath outside, cold water therapy before shower. So like I was doing a year of showering before that.
Right.
Biggest massive change in mindset for me. Because you're talking about disciplines, like inner critic. Like, no one normal goes, do you know what? I fancy getting outside in the cold water element and just sitting in cold, whether it's summer, winter, whatever. It's not natural for us to do that.
No.
So I incorporated that into my mindset, which has been one of the biggest changes I've found in what I've done. And a lot of people go for the physical side to it. What is it like? And it's like, no, it's more mindset. 3 to 5 minutes a day, sit in there, think about what you're doing, what your day's about, quieting that inner critic. It's always a sustainable block that you can, you turn up to a race or you turn up to a track day or whatever it might be. You think, I did that this morning. I'm set. I'm game.
Yeah.
Hardest thing I'm going to do all day. I've done it. It's 7 o'clock.
Yeah. Oh.
Do you always do it first thing in the morning?
100%, yeah.
He does. I did it this morning. I go through, like you said, with like hydration and diet and everything else. I really aim to be as best as I can in this, but ultimately I'm human as well, and I just forget, and I have all the same pain. So yeah, I put it off for ages, and then I bought a new one. I bought a new ice tub. So I thought, right, let's install it. So for the last week, I've been doing it consistently. Yeah, every single. This morning I was there 7 o'clock in the morning.
Nice.
Freezing. But
and you feel better for it the last week?
I feel amazing. Yeah, you do. I mean, when you look into it, I mean, Rob's a hell of a lot more educated, certainly educated now on this than me. But for me, I I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but if I've not got ADHD, I'll show my ass in Burton's window, and Rob has pretty much given me a prescription for it already. But what it does when I get in that from a mental point of view as well, I can't think. It turns everything off, and I feel. And for me, it's really strange this, but I feel like for the best part of my life, I've hardly used any of my senses. And when I get into an ice tub, I feel for the first time. So I don't use my brain to think about what I'm going to do. And I've realized I've spent so long trying to think my way through life without using any senses. And one of the things it does for me is it gives me sense, and I get to feel. And since that, I've been doing other meditations that bring me into the same state. But yeah, huge mindset change. And apparently like dopamine for 4 to 6 hours in it, Rob, or something like that.
3 hours.
3 hours of dopamine, and
2 to 3 drop off afterwards.
Yeah, and not that I'm a drug taker, but apparently cocaine's 5 minutes. Where, yeah, 5 minutes on cocaine or 3 hours with a cold tub, and it doesn't hurt you or kill you.
Oh yeah, yeah. Has anyone tried both at the same time, or is there any science behind that?
We'll have a look.
with a beer in your hand at the same time.
That's a different podcast. That one.
Oh, that's next week. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's late night with Dave. No, that's brilliant.
I've got a question, and this will pull you back into maybe the 20 odd years and Dan and Jessica's your sort of careers. What's been like? What would you class as your peak moment that you had in your life that you thought was peak, and then you achieved it and then realized actually there's another level beyond this? So like Jessie, you made a comment really early on. You said, I did all my training and then I got my GB thing, and like that was something you remembered, but like what's been in those periods of time of like, you know, you've got like, I don't know, a PB or something outside of your career that you thought this is the summit, and then you've hit it and then gone, shit, actually, like what do I do now?
So yeah, actually really interesting. So I had a really strange year, before the Commonwealths. So 2013, I was training really hard. I was like in the shape of my life. And I was cycling from the track to work, literally like a 5-minute journey, not far at all. And I got knocked off my bike. Something completely out of my control. I flew over the top of my handlebars, landed straight on my knee, shifted my shin back, did my PCL. My knee was just hanging, completely lax, no stability whatsoever. So long story short, I'd seen like loads of different people. Some people were saying, keep going, it's fine, blah, blah, blah. 2 weeks later, drove out of the start blocks, and I was in like floods of tears. I was in absolute agony. Went and had an MRI, saw another specialist. They diagnosed me with everything. I was out for like 5 months. Actually, I was out for probably 3.5 to 4 months. And rehabbing every single day. I had to do this stuff, training called occlusion. Don't know if you've ever heard of it or done it. Absolutely horrendous. So you have to do it every single day. It's like you know when you have your blood pressure taken, they put that cuff on your arm, stop the blood flow. So I had that right at the top of my leg, and I'm doing a leg press, which pressing it above my head to absolute failure. You have 30 seconds recovery, you go again, keeping the cuff on, 30 seconds recovery, go again to failure. And I was doing this every day. My eyes were streaming with tears because of the pain. It was like the worst lactic. But like that in itself, the mental to push through, and because I wanted it so bad to get back, and I wanted to qualify for the Commonwealth Games because this is the biggest like moment of my life if I was able to compete. Went away on a training camp to America for a month, and was meant to race out there. Whilst I was out there, it would have been my first running session. Before my running session, I had shot put. So did a couple of throws, threw out, and stepped out at the front of the circle. There's a massive ledge. done my ankle, and so bad that they thought I'd broken it. I managed to do some of the tendons in my ankle, but it bruised halfway up my calf. Like, it was horrendous, like black. And I was just thinking, like, what the hell is going on? Like, everything is like someone's telling me it's just not meant to be. Just stop, quit.
Like it's been
quit now.
sabotaged. Yeah.
Yeah, literally. What is the point? And I still stuck with it. Like, gosh, the emotional roller coaster was horrendous. But yeah, like by the end of the week, I was just like, can we just strap it up? Let's just strap it up so it can't move, and let me just try running, because I haven't run for like 3.5, 4 months. And then life went on. I couldn't race out there, obviously. Came back. Everyone, by the way, PB'd whilst they were out there, which was great for me to watch. Oh, are we still there?
Yeah, we're here. Sorry, I'm just intensely listening.
Sorry, no, my
Sorry, laptop was
my
cut
laptop's
out.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah. Where was I at? And
On PV'd in America.
I came back. Eventually, I had 2 competitions to try and qualify. And I was out in Malaga racing, and my first event was the sprint hurdles, and the blocks wouldn't stick into the ground. Like, what competition do blocks not stay in the floor? My coach on the start line actually had to stand on my start blocks. I had a panic attack and I couldn't breathe before my race. I was just like, oh my God, what is going on? Eventually managed to qualify for Commonwealths, and the moment I stepped out onto the track in Glasgow, I was so overwhelmed. Like, I just burst into tears walking out. I was like, what is going on? But it's because I had such a journey of like not many highs, but quite a few lows. And I thought, I've got through that. I've done it. Like, no matter what got thrown at me, I could pick myself up, and I was strong enough to get myself on this start line. And yeah, it was just
continue regardless of everything that was being thrown at you.
Yeah,
it's quite nice. It's quite nice. It's not nice to hear it, but at the same time, it's great to hear those stories, because people they watch something like the Commonwealth Games, see someone stand on a track and think, oh, okay, that they've made it that part to it. But
sailing.
Seeing like literally all those little things, like someone understanding my blocks to try and run off. I've tripped over this and hurt my ankle, and someone hit me off a bike, and all these sort of bits. So going forward from there, what mentality changed for your future competitions? Like, was you a stronger person? Did you?
I think I was so incredibly proud of myself to get to that point. I then had a year, maybe a year and a half, and I couldn't get up again for competitions. It was honestly the weirdest thing. And after the Commonwealths, like, my performances started dropping.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up going to see, I tore my hamstring, and I ended up having to go to see a psychologist, because something inside was, no matter how much I wanted to push myself, my body just kept switching off. So yeah, after that.
But that's essentially what you brushed on before. Like you were saying, like when you sort of reach your goal or you get that ultimate high.
Yeah.
Like what's next, right? Like, and for some people, it's quite common for people to finally make it to like a major championship, represent their country, have like this big stadium, and then after that, it's like, okay, like how do I better that? Or like you're constantly looking for the next high, but when you think you've achieved it, it's just not what you think it's going to be. Yeah. Like,
Dan, I've got a great one actually. Like, I watched Amazon 99 Man United thing, and David Beckham, on his last one, he said some really interesting words. He was talking about the Champions League final and then winning the triple, and he said those few minutes where we managed to score those few goals and we won the Champions League final, he said the feelings I achieved from that I've never achieved since then, and I probably never will. and it's like that peak in it. It's like and it's not just like you said, Jess, like the PBs afterwards. It's like how do you then find that next thing that keeps you going? So, from like your perspective, Dan, like what would be your peak performance, and what you still getting there?
So mine's actually a little bit different to Jess, I guess. So I had a lot of injuries and issues in my 20s, and obviously that's when people are at their peak. I was running the 400 meters, which is what I still run now. And I ran 47 seconds when I was 18 years old, which is good, like really good for an 18-year-old. But then for my whole 20s, I was still running 47 seconds. So like a decade had got by me. I was training hard, like every day, and I improved by a couple of tenths of a second, which is like that much distance. You know what I mean? So you're training every day, every year for a decade, and you're improving by like a step over that time. And I think for me, it was a massive mental block. Like physically, I sort of knew I had the tools to run a lot quicker, like not even just sneak below, but like run considerably quicker. Like coaches told me that I was sort of definitely going to run quicker. And then when I didn't, the coaches were always like scratching their head. And I was kind of like, I was looking to them for answers, but then they just didn't have the answers because they thought, well, you're doing this in training. Like your training times are showing me that you should be doing this, and then you're doing this instead. And anyway, one day, so it was actually less than 2 years ago, I went to the British Championships, and I was always so set on today's the day I'm going to run below 47 seconds and like see a 46 on the clock. And it never, ever happened. And I went to British Champs and I had the European record holder in my heat. He's Matt Hudson-Smith. If you follow athletics at all, he's he's very, very good, obviously. And it was only the winner and then a few fastest losers to get through to the final. So in my mind, I had to go and beat the European record holder. Otherwise, I wasn't getting to the final. So I was just like, you know what? Like this guy's probably going to try and shut it down on the home straight, and he's going to try and like jog down the home straight and make it really easy for himself to get to the final, and I can pick him off. And I just had that in my head, and it was the first time I'd raced in over 10 years where I wasn't fixated on running a time. Anyway, I went off after him, and he tore out. We got onto the home straight. He probably had like a 5 meter lead. And then he started jogging and he started shutting it down. And I still had energy. And I was like, I can do this. This is my plan. Let's get this guy. And long story short, I didn't quite get him. But because he's just like, he's up here. But I got so close that I ran 46.7 seconds. So like I broke the 47 barrier. And I cannot tell you, I mean, Jess was there when I'd done it. The mental relief that I got from running that time, because for years and years and years, I thought I was going to do it. And so many people that I believed that I was better than had jumped me in the rankings year after year. People would be running these times that I knew that I could run. But then after a decade, like, am I being delusional, or am I, do you know what I mean? Is it still realistic, or is it not anymore? Like I'm in my 30s now. I still haven't done it. People are probably questioning like why I'm still doing the sport. And then I run this time, and that was, like I say, less than 2 years ago. And now I've run 46.0. So now I'm knocking on the door of 45 seconds, like something that I would never have thought possible like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just became like a lot more dangerous because I went into races just knowing it was going to go well. It was just a case of how well it was going to go. And I've run 46 seconds 20 times since that day. And that was something that it literally became impossible to me, like mentally. But it just took a slight shift of focus of like, instead of trying to run the time, just try and run the performance that is good enough to get to that final. And then suddenly I was like unbeatable. I didn't even win that race, but I became this like unbeatable person in my own head that like, no matter what, I was going to run well. And if someone was going to beat me, then they was going to have to run really well to beat me. And if they did, fair play. You know, I used to be scared of losing, but now I'm not scared, but I'm almost like afraid of disappointing myself. I don't care. I could come 8th in the race, but run the fastest time of my life, and I'd be buzzing. Yeah. Whereas in the past, it'd all be like how people would look at your performance or how externals would judge you.
Yeah.
Whereas now, like, yeah, that's it. Like how you're perceived by others. Whereas, like, it has been a flick of a switch, hasn't it? Last couple of years, I've really changed that outlook. And as long as you're trying to achieve perfection yourself,
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter what anyone else is trying to do, because everyone's on different journeys. Like Jess and I mean, we live together, train together, but our journeys are very different.
Yeah.
So like, you can't compare yourself to anyone, as long as you get the best out of yourself, so that when you look back in years to come, you're like, you know what, I gave this my best shot and I achieved this and I achieved this, and you can be proud of yourself no matter what, really.
I love that. I mean, we came on to this earlier on when I was asking about mental and physical resilience within sports and everything else. And what you've described there sounds very similar to flow states.
Yeah.
And a lot of the top sports psychologists who, when you're at the top 0.001% and you get like Professor Steve Green or whoever else coming in to see you, that's what they'll go into. What is it that you're thinking while you're doing all the training? Everything's amazing. When you told me that, I've got goosebumps listening to that story then, mate. What an amazing story it is. But it sounds very much like flow states, doesn't it, Rob?
Like you quieten your brain to enable then like the inner chatter and it like almost autopilot to go through, which obviously comes into the enjoyment part to it.
Yeah.
Like you both have obviously experienced where you've got that set expectations is the bit that almost is the bit that you can't pierce the barrier through. Whereas if, like you said at the beginning, like we encourage people to just have fun and enjoy themselves, like that's where actually they can break stuff, because they're not thinking about those particular times. And because you can have a lack of energy just by what you're thinking inside there towards how you turn up to the event. So like originally, obviously you said like, I think it was it 2019 or 2019, 2020, Jess, you then was coached by Dan.
Yes.
So what made you go into the coaching of Dan? And I know it's going to be a bias because he sat right next to you, your partner, but like how has that helped? Because I'm both of Dave and I are coaches from two different parts to it. So I deal with business leaders in digital transformation, which you've met Mark, the CEO, before. So I work with Mark and we do a lot of that part to it. So a lot of stuff, like Dave was alluded at the beginning, is relatable. Like I'm more motivated here, and then about 2 weeks later, it's like, oh yeah, this thing's happened and this thing's happened. I remember I got one client who's always said like, one of his core values was no excuses. And every time he turned up to the plate for about 2 months, he gave me loads of excuses. And I got to the point I said, look, you've got a sign behind you, and every time I meet you, you're saying no excuses. And this is really boring. So like, are you going to stop the no excuses, or are we going to cut these calls because they're pointless?
Yeah.
So how has Dan impacted you from a coaching perspective on that performance level, especially when you've gone and changed and transitioned between different facets of, what you do sports wise?
We started off as just there was no coach. I couldn't find a coach anywhere, and this was based in Loughborough, and so it was like, well, Dan's coaching himself. Let me just train with you for a month till I hopefully find someone that wants to coach me.
Yeah, and just to very quickly interject there, I sort of actively encouraged Jess to look for another coach, because we hadn't been together for like a long time, firstly. So like, to spend all your time together, coaching, being together, whatever, it would have been a lot at the time. And also I was new to the coaching game, and like Jess is a serious athlete. So like, I wasn't ready to take on someone of that caliber when I was still sort of learning the ropes for myself. So I said to Jess from the start, let's see what we can find you. But by all means, you can train with me for the time being, and then we'll see what opens up.
Yeah.
You got that.
And what I just thought, this is working really well. I was in such a hole prior to training with Dan. Like, I wasn't enjoying training. I'd wake up in the morning and just think, oh, cannot be bothered. But because everyone was at the track, I'd rock up and turn up. But I just wasn't bringing. I'm always just like such a scatty personality. Like I'm a nutter weirdo, whatever you want to call it. But I just didn't have that. And then when we started working together, I was just enjoying it again. And because you're enjoying it, you want to be there. And when you want to be there and you're enjoying it, your performances thrive. So yeah, I'd say that is the first like key element. And then after probably about a year, wasn't it? We were focusing way more on our mindset, wasn't it? And I think that's seriously helped, hasn't it? The pair of us.
I think for you as well, you can elaborate, but I think for Jess, it was the independent learning, like the self-development. The way that I coach is it's based on feeling, and it's like I'll never just tell Jess, oh, this is what time you ran on this rep.
Yeah.
And like if it's a quick time, then it's good, and if it's a slow time, then it's bad. Like that's not how it works, because there's so many different ways of running the same time, right? So like I'll ask Jess, how did it feel? Like what was good about it? What could you improve about it?
Yeah.
And at the start, Jess didn't have any answers, because she was used to coaches who would literally just sort of shout the times out from the top of the stand.
Are you happy with it? I'd be like, are you happy? Is that good? Is that bad? Yeah, no, you need to run faster. Oh, no, you run too fast. Yeah, whatever it may be.
Very little feedback, just purely dictated by times, and then you'd be told you had a minute left recovery, and then you had to do it again. And so like you're literally you're just a workhorse. You're just getting stuff done, but you're not learning why you're doing it and sort of why it's helping you towards your goals.
Yeah.
So like you're sort of on autopilot. So your body's doing the workout, but your mind's not taking anything in at all.
Yeah.
So I said to Jess, like, I need more from you. You tell me what was good about it. I've got my own ideas. I'm obviously watching the reps, taking stuff in. And then eventually our ideas started to align. And Jess would say, oh, like I took hurdle 7 quite poorly. I didn't really push off hurdle 7. And I was like, I noticed that as well. Like I've already made a note of that as well. And like, that was the biggest improvement I could see from Jess. And that was on her. That wasn't on me. Like, obviously I encouraged her to think for herself, but you really took that on board.
Yeah.
I mean, Dan, it's a perfect. Like, I see it a lot in our industry. We have coaches all in the realist, like coaches effectively, but a lot of them are very directive. And it's like the fundamental belief in any of the coaching is you coach the person, not the problem.
Yeah.
And if you're very direct with someone, like you're never going to learn that. And like Sir John Whitmore is like a phenomenal book, performance coaching for performance, I think it's called, on here. And he talked about how he went into a golfing academy, and he trained people. Never been a golfing coach. He trained people in golfing, and then he had a golf coach next to training the other people. And they did it basically. It was like the 1980s. They did a scenario on it. And the coach, who's the golf coach, was like, right, you need to hit this thing, you need to do this thing, here's a bit, you need to put the ball here. So John Whitmore was a bit sat there and was like, how did that feel when you hit the club? Like, did you see it go left or right? Like, how are you going to adjust yourself to maybe compensate that? Or what do you want to do now? I want to go further. Okay, how do you feel you're going to hit the ball? Like, are you going to swing the club higher? And that person, actually, those people are actually outperforming the people that had a coach next to them for 20 odd years, but just telling them, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do that. So I love your concept, because I coach exactly the same way. And people sometimes find it frustrating, but you have to almost go with that wave to then tease, like you did with Jess, out. Like, no, actually critically think, like hurdle 7 is where you're struggling. So like, how are you going to approach that differently?
Yeah, of course. I think where we coach in similar ways is that we coach the process rather than the outcome.
Yeah.
The outcome's what everyone wants. Everyone wants like to be successful in whatever they do, but how are you going to get there? You know, like for us, yes, I wanted to run 46 seconds for a long time. So like that would be the goal.
Yeah.
But the whole process, I was forgetting this whole bit here on how to actually do it. And I was running the race and crossing the line and just hoping the time would say 46, rather than like, how do I run a 46-second 400? And it's like, okay, well, I need to accelerate like this. I need to hold my speed like this. I need to put in a kick at this point in the race. Like, these are the things that I need to do to run this, rather than thinking, oh, today's the day, I really hope I run 46. And then someone being like,
fingers crossed.
Like, well, I don't know, really. Like, yeah, hopefully you get a nice wind or a bit of sun or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the way. You've got to coach the process, right? And a lot of it is about feeling and understanding, I guess.
And Dave were actually, before we come on this podcast, Dave and I were chatting before, and Dave was talking about a feeling element to it, something that we were actually exploring as a pack.
Yeah.
Like how you feel in yourself and what you do. So it's a great point to be pulling on right now. Like we're
love it, guys. Love it. Like that's literally all that we think about. Pure feeling.
Amazing. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch on one thing. You mentioned, Jessie, earlier on, ADHD. Is this something that you've had for ages or known about, and how does it impact your sports career?
Yes, I've had it for ages, for my whole life. Trying to think when I actually got diagnosed, I was very young. Um, I was literally like a bouncy ball. It's just like go off at every single wall possible. I was nutter. My parents would try everything to try and just calm it down a little bit. Herbal remedies, you name it, no additives, all of the nutrition. I had to take all the what's it called, the medication, Ritalin and Concerta. And then as you get older, I feel like you learn about yourself and how you work, and okay, this person is normal and I'm the weirdo, which has got so much, but I love how I am. I love my energy, and because I used to get so down about it, and now I embrace how I am, but also the sport helps so much, so much. Just for like my mental health, more than anything. Like I think being able to take yourself away, and just be within, is important. But again, going back to routine, I think for me is super key. When I don't have routine, I get very agitated, don't I?
Yeah.
Dan's like, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
You be quiet here now, Dan. You have to be quiet here.
I think if my partner was here at the same time, she'd be saying exactly the same thing. What do you mean? I need to get in this ice bath like today. Like,
that's it. And if you don't do it, like, oh my God, like, well, I don't know what to do with my life now. Like, well, how is my day gonna go? Like, and I'll be constantly thinking. So yeah, I think routine and a schedule, tick boxes are fantastic.
how do you deal with your dopamine spikes post an event that you've done, and then the next day? Do you struggle with that element to it? Like there's almost like a dopamine hit, and then you almost sometimes you get oversensitized, over almost back to reality. Do you ever experience any of that?
I don't feel like that. Do you? Do you think I do?
No, I think you're pretty good.
I feel like maybe, to be fair, maybe I've learned to control it more so now, because maybe back in the day I would have been a lot worse. But
yeah, you're experienced now. Like obviously, especially for athletics in the summer, competitions come thick and fast. Like they could be every weekend. Sometimes you might have a midweek competition. So you need to sort of keep things low, and then when you need to spike, you sort of allow yourself to spike.
And I think also going back to what you guys were just talking about just a minute ago about the whole feeling thing, I really think that does help, because I feel, I can look back, I watch things, if it didn't go well, if it did go well, I know visually, but also I know how it feels, so then I can do it later on.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, I don't know if you guys. Sorry.
No.
I don't know if you guys have read the Chimp Paradox before.
Yeah.
Obviously, fantastic book. I think we listened to the thing recently as well, didn't we? The podcast. Audible. Audiobook. Yeah. But like, just the idea that, and it applies so much to athletics, where you've got this chimp that as soon as you cross the line, the chimp's going to react in a certain way when he sees the time, like sort of regardless of whether you want to or not. And that reaction, we've got so much better over the years of like controlling that reaction very quickly, and like the human sort of saying, you know what, like this might not be what you want, but let's break it down, let's be logical about this, and let's take plenty of positives. And you know what, if there was no positives, let's just bin that performance and let's focus on the next performance. Like there's other opportunities, there's other things. Whereas in the past, it might be a case of you cross the line, the time's slow, or you've not got a medal, and suddenly like it's the end of the world, and like nothing's ever going to get you out of this hole, and like it's all doom and gloom. And then like you sort of react in a way that you look back on with regret, and you sort of look back and you're sort of cringing at yourself, being like, I can't believe I reacted like that, when you're sitting down having dinner later that evening and it's sort of the dust has settled and the human takes back over, and it's like, I didn't need to react like that. Like, there's far worse things in life. This really isn't the end of the world, and we're going to push past this, and we're going to make the next one even better.
Yeah. Amazing. I love that.
I've got one last bit I want to touch on before we go, because I know obviously we've taken up a lot of your time.
It's fine.
Before we started, you see, you do some talks into like businesses around the relationship between business and what you do, like performance athletics wise. Like, what would you say are the main correlations that you see or you do your talks fundamentally on, just to enable anyone who might be on that side to it, maybe to get in touch with you about some of the stuff you might want to talk about?
Yeah, that's a good question. What was you going to say?
What are our like main topics when we normally have like four or five.
Yeah, so we talk about stuff like challenges. We talk about resilience. We talk about
goals.
We talk about goal setting. Obviously, you've got like your long-term goals, which everyone has, but then you've also got like your daily goals, which might seem like really small and insignificant. They might not even seem like a goal. Do you know what I mean? Like, even for example, getting up on your first alarm. Like, I'm going to set one alarm tomorrow, and I'm going to be up within like a minute.
Yeah.
You know, like I do certain things. Like, for example, if I get out of the shower, sometimes I'll go on my phone and I'll just sit there for ages after getting out, rather than just getting ready and getting on with my day.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I'll ask Alexa to set a timer for like 3 minutes, and in 3 minutes I need to like got dressed, I need to like brush my teeth, and I need to be ready.
Yeah.
And it's just like, as soon as that clock's ticking, I've then got structure in my life, and like that is like a little goal for me. And if I do it before the timer goes off and I'm ready, then that's great. But if I didn't, it's like, well, why am I wasting my time? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's only so much time in the day. You've got a lot you want to be cracking on with. Like, don't just waste time aimlessly. Like, open your phone, go on social media. You're just sitting there for 10 minutes looking at other people's lives, you know?
Yeah.
So stuff like that is quite important with the goal setting. Jess mentioned before, routines. We talk a lot to people about, don't we? About like having routines that sort of keep you accountable, keep you successful. We also talk a lot about the glass half empty and glass half full sort of take on things.
Mm-hmm.
How like people's different mindsets towards the exact same scenario will sort of yield to very different outcomes.
Yeah.
You get people looking at a task thinking, oh, this is too hard, I can't do it. And then, but the same person like 6 months later might look at the task and say, this is challenging, but you know, I'm up for the challenge. I'm here for it. Like, let's go. And like, that's the same person. They've got the same skill set, but they've applied it very differently because of the way they've gone into the task itself.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest things. Like, when you sort of cross from the sports world to the business world, it's your attitude towards the task at hand.
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to approach it, and how are you going to sort of find success from that, rather than just sort of bowing down and being like, this is too difficult, I can't do this, or this wasn't meant for me, it wasn't meant to be. Like, make it meant to be. You know, like that's very much in your hands. Like, that's what I say to Jess about like athletics in particular, is that the great thing about it, compared to something like football, where it's a team sport, is that it's all in your hands. Like, it's completely on the day, it's completely down to me. Like, if I'm there physically and I'm there mentally, then there's nothing can stop me. Whereas like, if I played football, or if I worked for a company and we was doing like a big group pitch, right? I could give the best pitch of my life, but then one of the other guys could just fumble something and say something that the guys weren't looking for. And then suddenly, like, I've given the best performance of my life, but got absolutely nothing for it.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously in like an individual environment, even though you've got your team around you, you can still give, like, you can give the best ever, and no one can take that away from you. So like, I guess you can move that into like a scenario where I'm going to give 100% of my best. And if that's good enough, then so be it. And if it's not, then I couldn't have done any more anyway.
Yeah.
You know, so like, it's sort of it's a double positive way of looking at it. Like, Jess and I are both trying to qualify for the Olympics this year, and obviously qualifying for the Olympics isn't easy, like, because otherwise obviously everyone would be trying to do it. Yeah. So like, if we do qualify, then that is like the ultimate euphoria. Like we've made it, like all these years of hard work. But if we don't, that doesn't take away from all the years of hard work that we've put in. Like I think the sort of success story comes from trying to qualify, rather than actually qualifying. And I know that's not saying it in a defeatist way, because like we've got very good chances of qualifying still. But like, don't put so much pressure on that outcome, like we discussed. Like, take pride in the journey and really make the most of the journey, so that when you look back, when you're like 60, 70 years old, and you look back, you sort of got no regrets. Like, you're not one of those people who sit in the pub and was like, oh, I could have made it in football, but you know, I got this knee injury. And then, like I said, I was like the best at the school.
You team, Chelsea.
Yeah, exactly that. Like everyone's got a story. Like I used to work in a pub for 7 years, and like I'd barely go a day without someone telling me that they used to be like an elite sports person, and then something happened that was out of their control, and then suddenly they didn't quite make it, and they wasn't as fast as like Usain Bolt, you know. And it was one of those where like, great, but I don't want to be that person who looks back and's got like an excuse rather than like a result. And I know Jess feels exactly the same about that.
It's like building the whys around it as well, and it's like what you're ultimately saying there is, you know, what's the real reason you want to do this? Then you've got a lot more fuel to be taking there. If there's no big why there, really, there's no real point in you wanting to be there, is there? I suppose, or do anything. So, building that and the resilience around it.
Definitely.
But
I think we're done here today. Actually, I think it's been a brilliant podcast.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
Now, hour and 15 minutes later.
Has it been that long? Wow.
I think of it later, but I really appreciate your time to them, guys. So where's the best place for people to find either one of your sort of connections wise?
Socials, Instagram at Jessie Tappin, and
Dan Putnam as well. So Jessie Tappin, Dan Putnam, both on Instagram. And that's where we basically post about clients. We post about ourselves, our journey in athletics. So if anyone wants to follow that, then reach out to us.
We'll put it in description or show notes for people. Anybody wants to get in contact with you, that'd be amazing. Yeah.
And we wish you success in qualifying for.
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Not long now.
Yeah, Olympic trials, guys, end of June. So, not long now.
Well, I hope you get there. Hope you get it and smash the PBs left, right, and centre.
That's it.
We do what we can.
That's it.
Thanks, guys.
Right, thanks ever so much. It's brilliant.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.